We are going to spend a little bit of time talking about requesting letters of recommendation. There are pieces of this that you can start working on during the summer that will help you be better prepared when you start thinking about the college applications in the fall or later this summer. So when do you need a letter of recommendation? So typically, the most common reason that students need a letter of recommendation is for the common application. And that's one application used by over 700, mostly private colleges and universities, although more and more public colleges are starting to use the common application, including University of Oregon this fall is on board with the common application. Now you'll still be able to apply using their regular application, but if you are already using the common application for other schools, it'll be really easy to just add University of Oregon to that application. The common application will ask usually for 1 to 2 teacher letters of recommendation. Very seldom will they ask for more than 2. 1 counselor letter of recommendation, and then optionally, if you have letters from outside sources such as your employer that you've worked for a long time, a youth group leader, a coach, something that helps provide a full picture of who you are, you can ask for letters from optional sources too, and your counselor can help you in getting that information to the recommender so that they can add it to your common application. For honors colleges at Oregon public schools or out-of-state public schools, oftentimes they'll want a letter of recommendation from a teacher. And so that's something to keep in mind if you're planning. We often have students apply to the Clark Honors College at University of Oregon or the Honors College at Oregon State. And so you will need a letter of recommendation typically for that. And then many times scholarship applications will want at least 1 letter of recommendation. And so make sure that you are looking at that when you're going through your scholarship applications. Typically, you do not need a letter of recommendation for public universities, at least in Oregon and usually out of state. They don't want a letter of recommendation. In fact, lots of times they won't even look at it. The exception to this rule is if you are applying through alternate admissions because you do not meet the admissions requirements for that college or university. And if you think that that's the case for you, if your GPA falls below what they require or something like that, talk to your counselor and they will help you out. So I want to tell you what you need. I'm going to exit out of this and show you how to get the forms that you need to request a letter of recommendation. So you go to the ISB website right here, and you go to this academics tab, and when you click on that, when you hover over that, you can go to College Career Center. I guess you can click on it too. And when you come to the College and Career Center, click again. Down here you'll see letters of recommendation. You'll notice that there are 2 different types of letter of recommendation forms. There's a teacher letter of recommendation request form and a counselor one. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the difference. I'm going to go over the teacher letter first. So this is, you can download it in both PDF and Word, although I always say to request or to download it in Word because then you can type your information and that makes it a little bit easier. But you can see what you need to do. It's important to follow these instructions. It's really important to write a thank you note to your teachers after they write you a letter of recommendation. And when you ask them for a letter of recommendation, you want to say, can you write me a positive letter of recommendation? You want to ask them at an appropriate time, not in the middle of class. You want to, email them and schedule a meeting in advance, and make sure that you follow up with them and really be proactive about the letter, and understand that they are very, very busy, and you need to give them adequate time, at least 3 weeks. So at least 15 weekdays before you need the letter. We ask that you, after you complete this form, you bring it to your counselor so they can sign off. It just helps us look over the forms, and we also kind of try to keep track of the teachers who are writing letters and make sure that they aren't getting super overwhelmed with requests, although sometimes that's easier said than done. So there's just lots of information about what you are doing. There's lots of questions that you can ask. I'm going to show you a couple videos in a second from teachers about what they are looking for. But overall, you really, really want to make sure that you're giving a lot of detail, that you're reminding them about specific things that you did in their class. Your teachers know you well, but they have a lot of students, and so you want to make sure that they have the information that they need to write you a really good letter, and any information about outside of school that would be helpful to them. So that is the teacher letter of recommendation request form. How is the counselor letter different? So if you think about the counselor letter is trying to paint an overall picture of the student, including their accomplishments both inside and outside of school. Sometimes kids are pretty quiet in school and not very active in the school activities, but outside of school they're involved in 15 different things, or they are working to support their family, or they're babysitting younger siblings, that kind of stuff. We want to make sure that we know that, and so that we can paint an accurate picture of you in our letter of recommendation. If necessary, and we don't have to do this, but if you would like us to address obstacles that you've faced, family situations, financial information that you are worried about, we can put that into the counselor letter of recommendation. So some of that confidential information that you wouldn't want everybody to know, something that you might talk to your counselor about but not other people, we are happy to address those things in our letter of recommendation. Just as with the teacher letters, the more details and examples you provide your counselor, the better they will be able to write your letter. So give us a lot of information, and that is really helpful, because a lot of times we know you or we don't know you very, very well. So sometimes we need you to provide that information for us so that we can write that letter. Counselors also look at your CAS reflections and talk to other teachers for input about a student, and we will put that information into a letter as well. So the counselor letter of recommendation form is just a little bit different. This is another reason to write it in Word. Some of the questions are exactly the same as you put on your teacher letter, so you can just cut and paste there. We do ask that you sign the front of the form, and that's about that personal information you give us. We won't ever give out your social security number. I should take that off there. But that you give us permission to address some of those things that might be confidential in your letter of recommendation. And if you don't want us to address those things, we won't. I will say that the one exception to that is academic honesty concerns that you've had over the years. If you have had an academic honesty situation, talk to your counselor about that, because that's something, typically speaking, that we will have to write about in your letter of recommendation if the college asks for it, which all of the common application schools do ask for it. So just won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but make sure that you talk to your counselor if that's a situation that you are in. Again, some of the same information, but you also notice that these questions will ask, how have you contributed to ISB? What are some obstacles that you faced? Like, it's overall academic successes or struggles or that kind of stuff. So some of the questions are different, but all are important in writing your letter of recommendation.
Okay, so if you want me to write a recommendation letter for you, I just need a couple things. I need you to tell me in writing why it is that you want the letter from me, and why you chose me. And then what are some things that you want me to highlight about your academics in the letter? What are the things that you've done in the class, either this year or in previous classes that you might have had with me? What are some things that you want me to highlight? And then especially about history, how have you connected history to your life beyond the classroom? And what are some of the themes that we've talked about during the year? What are some ways that you see the relevancy of what we've done in class to the world beyond ISB? Also, then, if you could tell me some stories, I'd like to hear one story about something that happened in my classroom that was meaningful to you, and maybe we'll also highlight some aspect of your learning. And then something about you that I wouldn't know from the classroom. So a story doesn't have to be funny, but could be funny, about you that would give me and the reader, whoever's going to read this recommendation, some insight into who you are. All right, look forward to it.
Hi, Miss Chef. We are talking about letters of recommendation, and I was wondering what you look for when you are looking at the letter of recommendation request forms.
Well, for me to write a good letter of recommendation, I really need details. I really need specifics. And I write a letter that addresses both my class and the students' performance in my class, but I also write about the students' life outside of my class. So who they are in the school and who they are even outside of the school. So those are the three components that I usually work with. And the more that I know, the better the letter that I can write. Ideally, a good form is reflective, and it talks about growth, and it talks about challenges and maybe how you overcame a challenge. A good form that enables me to write a great letter is the kind of thing where you actually have specific examples of class, where a moment where you did something or something meant something to you. Maybe even wasn't even about like you did anything, but just like you learned something and you thought about something a different way, or you had an aha about a skill that you were working with, or something like that. So I think the more reflective, the more detailed you are about what happens in history class, but also what happens for you in this IB diploma program experience, the better.